A new chapter in OSGi Basics. Well, a little bit of a changed environment, but we'll just add more information as it becomes available. For this chapter, I'm assuming you are building a brilliant own plugin and want to deploy it as an OSGi bundle, as a jar to the Liferay runtime. For our intents and purposes, this jar is called my jar, and of course, nobody writes all of the software themselves, but they're using, and you're probably using, as well as I, external dependencies. And if you look at the open source repositories or at your own company's repository, you might just find what you need, and we'll call it dependency jar. It's in blue here because this is not an OSGi bundle. And we're looking for options to have this dependency with your future OSGi bundle, with your Liferay plugin. And with that, I want to shine some light on three options in Gradle. And those are named compile, compile only, and compileInclude. Now, for our intents and purposes, for the ones of this particular chapter, I'm going to simplify it a little bit because I'm summarizing compile and compile only. They don't make a big difference for this chapter. They do, but we can abstract away from the difference for these purposes. Let's start at the bottom. CompileInclude. This is a Liferay extension that will do magic. It will take any jar file that you declare as a dependency and just bring all of the code that your own OSGi bundle depends on, will bring that into the jar file itself, with one drawback. The jar file will become heavy. Why? Because all of this code is actually copied inside of the original jar file, and you'll just grow in size. It might matter, it might not. When does it matter? Well, it matters as soon as you build yet another plugin. Let's call that my other jar, that happens to have the same dependency. Let's say here we are. And if you build that with the same technique, then yes, you will have now two heavy plugins deployed to your runtime. Continue with as many plugins as you need. That's CompileInclude. Now, what's your option? What's your alternative? Let's go with compile and compile only. Compile and compile only assume that you are deploying your code as an OSGi bundle. What does that mean? Well, you'll either have to convert your former blue dependency jar into a yellow dependency jar, because now it's packaged as an OSGi bundle. See the color coding I'm using here? If you use an open source dependency that's not packaged as an OSGi bundle, check again. There are projects, for example ServiceMix, that republish open source libraries as an OSGi bundle, and you might just find it there. What happens when you deploy, or when you use compile and compile only for your own build file? Well, it's simple. You just need to deploy your dependency to the OSGi runtime as well, and you're done. In case you build your actual second jar, my other jar, they both will be able to share this one implementation in the OSGi runtime. Now assume you have a couple of these and they all depend on this external file. You're done. Why am I saying that compile and compile only are the same? Well, they aren't, but if you look at the Gradle documentation, you'll see all of the differences. It took me a long time to figure that out, and for the intents of this chapter, they actually are the same. They're building exactly the same my jar, my other jar, if you declare your dependency with compile or with compile only. Why is that? Because I have simplified this dependency to be just a single dependency. It doesn't have any transitive dependencies. As soon as you have your dependencies that require more and more and more plugins or more and more code, then yes, compile and compile only will make a difference, but that's not the focus of this particular chapter. So choose wisely, choose compile and compile only if you have a dependency on an OSGi bundle. Consider compile include, but remember, as soon as you use compile include, you'll end up with a very heavy jar. The more you use compile include, the heavier all of your jars are. And the beauty of OSGi, or one of the beauties of OSGi, is actually the option to compose an application out of tiny little jars, tiny little bundles. So do yourself a favor and use compile include as your last option if nothing else really works.